Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone out in the world. Hope you all had a great Cinco de Mayo. I forgot to mention that yesterday. Happy Cinco de Mayo. I hope you had some delicious Mexican food last night. We cooked up some carne asada steaks, fresh guacamole. I have a new herb garden. I chopped up some fresh cilantro. We were going to play this domino game called Mexican Train Game, but we didn't get around to it. So maybe we'll do it today. Anyway, I'm back for another exciting chapter in By the Great Hornspoon. Today's chapter is called Jamocha Jack. Jamocha Jack. And as we left off, Praiseworthy and Jack were in a stagecoach. They were headed up to, I think they decided on Hangtown was the gold fields that they were going to head to. And they end up being a stagecoach knee to knee with Cut-Eye Higgins, who now is no longer the judge. Now he's a dentist. So as you can see, he kind of just picks whatever job he wants. So he probably has zero experience, and he usually picks jobs that people kind of respect him for so that they won't question that he's a bad guy. So he's tricky like that. They got held up by bandits. The bandits stole all their stuff. Praiseworthy put his gold dust inside the fingers of his glove, ended up hitting one of the guys, and he went 15 feet uphill, and everybody can't believe this guy can hit so hard, but nobody knows that he actually had metal inside his glove. And also, when they searched through Praiseworthy's belongings, they found a mysterious picture of Aunt Arabella that Jack did not know about. So Jack was a little surprised, and he was kind of like, why does he have a picture of Aunt Arabella? Maybe he grabbed it so if Jack got homesick. We just don't know, but it's definitely a little suspicious, right? All right, so let's see what happens. Chapter 11, Jamocha Jack. The stagecoach climbed as if it were part mountain goat. It lurched, it halted, it bucked, it leaped, and it clung. At times, there was a sheer drop to one side of the trail. Far below, the pine trees looked to Jack like sharp green lances waiting to skewer them if they slipped. He only looked down once in a while. So these old roads, they didn't have any like barriers on the side. It just went straight down. So this rickety stagecoach with wooden wheels, it probably had some pretty hairy turns. Definitely not for the faint of heart. They were almost at the diggings, he told himself. He'd been telling himself that for days. But at last the stagecoach arrived, bringing a cloud of summer dust all the way from Sacramento City. "Hangtown, gents!" the driver snapped with a final crack of his whip. "Looks mighty quiet today. Don't see nobody standing under a pine limb with his boots off the ground," which means nobody hanging under a tree. A dog greeted them at the end of the street and barked them all the way up to the Empire Hotel. The passengers got out. There was road dust in Jack's eyebrows, in his ears, and all the way down his neck. Now that they had arrived, he had gold fever so bad that he didn't see how he could wait another 5 minutes to get his shovel in the ground. "Hangtown!" Everywhere he looked, there were men in jack boots and colored shirts. There wasn't a woman to be seen. The miners were coming and going, or standing and talking, or sitting and whittling. Blue freight wagons were being unloaded. Blindfolded mules were being loaded. The store shacks on both sides of the street were raised on wood pilings like short legs and looked as if they had just walked to town. Jack shouldered the shovel and Praiseworthy shouldered the pick, and on the roof of the stage, the driver was throwing down trunks and hand luggage. "What's the best hotel in town?" asked Praiseworthy. "The Empire," asked the driver. "What's the worst one in town?" squinted Cut-Eye Higgins. "The Empire." Praiseworthy glanced at Jack. "Unless I miss my guess, there's only one hotel in town, the Empire." That reminds me of Star Wars. It was exactly 1 hour and 5 minutes before Jack saw the diggings. First, Praiseworthy registered at the hotel. They washed, and immediately Praiseworthy wrote a letter to Dr. Buckby advising him that Cut-Eye Higgins was in Hangtown, but that the map had fallen into the hands of a gang of highwaymen. "Can we go now?" said Jack, fidgeting. He had polished his hornspoon so much that he could see his nose in it. "Go where, Master Jack?" "The diggings." "Oh, the diggings will still be there after lunch, Master Jack." Praiseworthy's patience was a marvel and an exasperation. They had come more than 15,000 miles, and now they had to stop to eat. Jack didn't care if they passed up eating for a week, a month even. He wondered if he could ever grow up to be as easygoing as Praiseworthy. But once they sat down in the hotel restaurant, Jack discovered he was so hungry that he ordered bear steak. The only other item on the menu was sow belly and beans, and Jack figured you had to be starving to eat that. "You and the boy want bread with your grub?" asked the waiter. He was a big fellow in big floppy boots. Why not? Answered Praiseworthy. It's $1 a slice. The butler slowly arched an eyebrow. $2 with butter on it. Praiseworthy peered at Jack, and then he smiled. Hang the cost, sir. We're celebrating our arrival. Bread and butter, if you please. The bear steak was greasy and stringy, but something to write home about. Jack forced it down, and after they left the restaurant, Praiseworthy bought a pair of buckskin pouches at the general merchandise store and emptied the gold dust out of his glove. The index finger was springing a leak, and Jack liked the new leather smell of their pouch. He tucked it underneath his belt next to his hornspoon and was beginning to feel like a real miner. Then, with tin wash basins under their arms and the pick and shovel across their shoulders, they set out for the diggings. The day was hot and sweaty, and when they reached running water, they saw miners crouched everywhere along the banks. They were washing gold out of the dirt and everything from wooden bowls to frying pans. Anybody digging here? Asked Praiseworthy when they came to a bare spot. Sure is, came the answer. That's Buffalo John's claim right there. The butler and the boy moved on upstream. Here and there, miners were shoveling dirt into long wooden troughs set in running water to catch the flakes of gold. Anybody digging here? Asked Praiseworthy. Yep, came the answer. That's Jimmy from town's claim. On and on they went, looking for a place to dig. They passed miners in blue shirts and red shirts and check shirts and some in no shirts at all. Picks assaulted the earth and shovels flew. Weathered tents were staked to the hillsides, and the smell of boiling coffee drifted through the air. After they had walked a mile and a half, Jack began to think they would never find a patch of ground that wasn't spoken for. Now, this was a real problem during the gold rush. You had to stake your claim. So if somebody had already said, this is my plot of land, then you weren't allowed to start digging there because then you were called a claim jumper, and then people would beat you up. So you don't want to do that. So they're asking for, is this available? Is this available? And then they would take little sticks and like empty cans, and they would tie string amongst them, and that would kind of mark off where their spot was. Suddenly, a pistol shot cracked the mountain air. Praiseworthy's wash basin rang like a bell and leaped from his arm and went clattering away. You there! A voice bellowed from behind. Praiseworthy turned. His eyes narrowed slowly. Are you talking to me, sir? Talking and shooting. What are you doing with my washpan underneath your arm? Jack stared at the man. He had a thick, tangled beard, and his ears were bent over under the weight of his big slouch hat. Needless to say, sir, you are mistaken, Praiseworthy answered. Until this moment, I've had the good fortune never to set eyes on you or your washpan, sir. We don't take kindly to thievery in these parts, growled the miner, stepping forward. A man steals around here, we lop off his ears. That's miner's law. Do you have any laws against shooting at strangers? Nope. Jack couldn't imagine Praiseworthy with his ears lopped off. He took a grip on the handle of the shovel as the miner came closer. His heart beat a little bit faster, and he waited for a signal from Praiseworthy. The miner belted his pistol and picked up the washpan. He crimped his eye and he looked it over. Oh, it's mine, all right. You're either nearsighted or a complete scoundrel, said Praiseworthy. Jack was ready to fight, if not for their lives, at least for Praiseworthy's ears. Just then, a flash of tin in the sunlight from a pile of wet rocks caught Jack's eye. He dropped the shovel and he went for it. Is this your pan? Jack asked. The miner's bushy eyebrows shot up like birds taking wing. Oh, it is at that, ain't it? Then he laughed as if the joke were on him. I'd forget my boots if I didn't have them on my feet. Praiseworthy peered at the man. Apparently, shooting at strangers by mistake didn't amount to anything in the diggings. The miner hardly gave it another thought. How about a cup of Jamocha? Jamocha? Asked Praiseworthy. Coffee. I got a pot working over there by the fire. Where are you strangers from? Pitch Pine Billy Pierce, they call me, and I'd be rightly pleased if you did the same. Shucks, looks like I wore a hole plumb through your washpan. Good shooting, though, weren't it? Praiseworthy put his finger through the hole. The washpan was completely useless. Oh, perfect shooting, sir. No hard feelings, said Pitch Pine Billy. I can show you more ways to wash gold than skin a cat. Let's get the coffee. Put some hair on the boy's chest. He your son? Jack looked at Praiseworthy. My son? The butler started to explain, but the miner didn't leave enough long of a pause. Mississippi McFinn has his 2 boys with him. I hear they just struck it rich over at Poverty Hill. And then there's that Peterman boy. He and his pa's trying their luck at Swellhead's diggings. What's your name, boy? Jack. Well, you look powerful clean for a youngin'. It don't seem natural somehow. Why, your ears shine like new minted gold pieces. Jack felt his face redden and he glanced at Praiseworthy. I'm not going to wash for a week, he thought to himself, or maybe a month, or maybe even until we get back to Boston. There was an air of hospitality about the miner that pleased Praiseworthy, and he forgave him for the hole in his gold pan. Sir, a cup of coffee would taste just fine. Pitchpine Billy led them to his weathered canvas tent pitched along the slope, and the coffee pot was boiling merrily. He filled 3 tin cans, black as paint, it looked like to Jack. He had never tasted coffee in his entire life. Aunt Arabella would be furious. He looked at Praiseworthy, and Praiseworthy gave him a nod as if to make up for having Jack wash his ears back at the hotel. The tin cans were so hot they felt as if they'd just been forged. Jack sat on a rock to let the brew cool, although Praiseworthy's coat and bowler hat had fallen by the wayside, he clung to his black umbrella as his last badge of his calling. A butler? A butler? Mused Pitchpine Billy. He drank his coffee down, steam and all. Are you any relative to Hemp Butler over at Muletown? No, the name is Praiseworthy, not Butler, sir. The miner crimped an eye. You don't say. Well, he does call himself Butler, old Hemp does. Never knowed his name was Praiseworthy, but I always figured him for the shifty type. How about 10-Spot Butler over at Poker Flat? Is he your folks or something? There seemed no point in trying to make himself clear, and Praiseworthy just let it go. Tell me, Mr. Pierce. Just call me Pitchpine Billy. How do we stake a claim around here? Oh, easy. You find yourself a piece of real estate nobody's working on, and you pound 4 pegs in the corners. You put tin cans on them so folks can see. Rags'll do. And you got yourself a legal claim. That's miner's law. And long as you work at least 1 day a month, it stays yours. He laughed and stroked his beard. Of course, the other 30 days you got to stand around shooting off squatters and claim jumpers. He refilled his tin can. Why, there are places along the river where the claims is only 4 foot square, and the boys is digging out a fortune back to back. Jack finally picked up his tin can. The steam alone was like a dragon's breath. Now he was almost sorry Praiseworthy had given him a nod. At the first taste, the coffee bit his tongue. Drink up, Jamocha Jack. Jamocha Jack, that's what we'll call you. A man ain't really accepted around here until he's won himself a little nickname. Best coffee I've ever tasted, Jack said hoarsely. Plenty more in the pot. I ground in a few acorns for extra flavor. Jack winced inwardly. Jamocha Jack. The name pleased him, but he wasn't sure that he could actually win this name. The coffee stung and burned and actually tasted poisonous. He forced down another mouthful, and he was afraid the miner would take back the name if he didn't drain the can. So he tried another swig, but it wouldn't go down. Praiseworthy, catching Jack's distress out of the corner of his eye, shifted his position. The tip of his umbrella jiggled Jack's elbow, and the tin can jumped. The coffee spilled. It's no account, said Pitchpine Billy. He lifted the pot, and he refilled Jack's can. We don't stand on table manners out here. Jack gulped and stared at the fresh, steaming, black potion of coffee. He had to begin all over again. Praiseworthy gave him a compassionate glance. Sorry. He considered it his duty to look out for Jack, but now he had only made matters worse. Let me show you how to wash out gold without water, Pitchpine Billy was saying. Take your hornspoon, boy, and scrape me some dirt from the crack in that rock over there. It's places like that the Spangles like to hide, if there is any, that is. Jack was glad to see the coffee aside to cool. He slipped the hornspoon from his belt and turned eagerly to the crack in the rocks. Just a handful, boy. Jack scraped away, gathering up river sand bits of dead pine needles. The hornspoon worked fine. It got in the cracks, and it filled the miner's outstretched hand and sat on his heels to watch. This is a trick the Sonorans use, said Pitchpine Billy. They come from Sonora down, way down in Mexico. Water must be scarcer than gold around there. We call this dry washing. He poured the dirt in a small stream from fist to hand like sand in an hourglass, while at the same time blowing on it, sand and pine needles scattered under the force of his breath. He poured again and again, and each time the handful of dirt got smaller and smaller. Grain for grain, gold is 8 times heavier than sand. If you blow just right, the spangles fall and the lighter stuff goes a-flying. Jack bent closer. Finally, Pitchpine Billy had nothing left to blow. He held out the rough palm of his hand and he laughed. Boy, you struck it rich already. Look there. Resting in his hand were two gleaming pinheads of gold, but to Jack, they looked like as large as jewels. Put 'em in your pouch, boy, said Pitchpine Billy. Easy, don't knock over your coffee again. Thank you, sir, Jack smiled, whipping out his brand new buckskin pouch. But they're yours. The miner grinned. Anything that small, I throw back in. You and your pa can squat on my claim if you want. But Praiseworthy's not my. There's more yeller underfoot than I can dig out. I'd be obliged if you could clear some of it away. You got any idea how to work that tin pan of yours, boy? Mr. Quartz Jackson, are you a friend of old Quartz? Why didn't you say so? Stay for dinner, you hear? We'll have some sow belly and beans. I won't take no for an answer. Now let's get our boots wet and I'll learn you how to pan. Bring your coffee. Jack exchanged a glance with Praiseworthy. Sow belly and beans? Ugh. We'd be delighted to join you for dinner, Praiseworthy said, since Pitchpine Billy had left them no other choice. They moved to the edge of the stream, and Jack took a swallow of coffee. The miner pulled a few weeds and threw them in the pan. Jack got down another mouthful of coffee. Around running water, explained Pitchpine Billy, gold has a way of getting tangled in the roots of weeds and grass. He dipped water in the pan, and he washed the roots clean, and he added more dirt until the wash basin was better than half full. Then he began to pan using the same circular motion that Quartz Jackson had shown them. You get rid of the rocks and the slickens, little by little. Slickens? Asked Jack. You know, mud with the gold worked out of it. Keep the pan working and dipping until the spangles reach the bottom. Fish out the rocks and see how I'm letting the slickens spill over the edge of the pan? It takes practice, boy. At first, you'll lose more color over the side than you'll save in the bottom, but you'll get the hang of it. Ain't you drinking your coffee, boy? Why, look there. We struck it rich again. Let me have your pouch. Jack took 2 hard swallows of coffee, then he pulled off his shoes, rolled up his trousers, and tried his hand with the gold pan. The mountain water was icy, but he hardly noticed it at first. He hunted grass and weeds. 5 minutes later, he could no longer feel his feet. You're standing in melted snow off those high peaks, Pitchpine Billy chuckled. Wash out enough color and you can buy yourself some real boots. Then he turned to Praiseworthy. You ain't exactly dressed for prospecting. And your boy, he'll be needing a tent and a mountain canary. A mountain canary, Praiseworthy asked. You know, a mule, a burro. There goes one hee-haw now. Got a fine singing voice, don't he? What's that umbrella for anyway? A matter of habit, said Praiseworthy. Well, it ain't gonna rain around here for some time, but seeing as how I punctured your gold pan, I don't see any reason why an umbrella wouldn't work just as well. Let me show you. But, Pitchpine Billy lifted it off Praiseworthy's arm and opened the umbrella wide. He stuck it in the ground upside down. If you don't mind, sir, said Praiseworthy with a flash of impatience, I happen to treasure that. Oh, yes, sir, the miner was saying to himself. It ought to work just fine, this umbrella here. Then he began shoveling dirt into the open umbrella. Praiseworthy watched with a kind of quiet horror. He'd carried that black umbrella for years, and now it was being ruined before his eyes. I'll thank you, sir. But by then, Pitchpine Billy had lifted the dirt-filled umbrella into the water and was dunking it. He began to twirl it by the handle. He dunked and twirled and twirled and dunked. Why, I've panned gold in a pocket handkerchief, the miner said. The dirt dissolves and washes through and leaves the spangles behind. Jack, meanwhile, was working the slickens out of his pan. He'd stepped out of the water to warm his feet and take a sip of coffee and then return. He worked 2 pans of dirt without finding a single speck of color, but then he didn't have the hang of it. He was losing the gold with the slickens, but he stayed with it, and his feet were turning blue. Finally, Pitchpine Billy was no longer plunging the umbrella, but working with a deft, gentle washing movement. He fingered out the rocks, and after another moment, returned the umbrella back to Praiseworthy. Best gold pan along the river, he grinned. I might buy me one of these myself. The mud was gone, and in its place along the black fabric of the umbrella lay a bright dusting of gold and spangles. Praiseworthy crimped an eye and smiled at the hospitable miner. I think I can get the hang of it, sir. And for those of you who have this book on the cover, this is Praiseworthy and Jack. Praiseworthy's got his umbrella, and Jack's got his washpan. You can see the tent in the back. That's where they were having their coffee. Praiseworthy crimped an eye and smiled. Oh, I already did that. He removed his shoes, rolled up his trousers, and set to work. All through the afternoon, Jack could be seen panning and taking a sip of cold coffee, and Praiseworthy cut an elegant figure, plunging a muddy umbrella into the stream. Finally, Jack reached the bottom of the tin can, and that was that. Yes, sir. First rate coffee, pitch pine Billy, he said. First rate. Glad you liked it, answered the miner with a bushy-faced grin. Jamocha Jack. I like it. All right, so next chapter is called Bullwhip. So Jack has earned his nickname of Jamocha Jack. He choked down probably the world's grossest coffee with no sugar, no cream. It looked like oil, super thick, but he wanted to keep his cool name, so he knew he had to finish the coffee. So he choked it down. He's now Jamocha Jack. Praiseworthy does not have a nickname yet, but he is going to have one shortly. So we'll see what you guys think of his nickname. What's going on? This afternoon, I am not Zooming with any of the classes, so enjoy catching up on whatever work you need to get done. Tomorrow, I'll see you for our next chapter, and then I will see Miss Nogdave's class at 1 o'clock for social studies. So be sure to bring your textbook and also bring your chapter 7 chapter review packet and a pencil. We will be starting with Would You Rather, then we'll get into social studies, and then end with Would You Rather as well. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Wow, it's really nice out today. I might have to bust out the slip and slide or maybe just turn on the sprinklers. We'll see. Love you guys. See you soon. Bye.